Welcome to the Clarity Coach Podcast with Rockie Lee, strategic intervention coach, specializing with singles and couples, helping them find clarity in life, in relationships, and in personal development. And now, here's your host.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 18 of Clarity Coach Love Talks. And I have here again with my co-host, Kimberly, who will be joining us in the conversation today to talk about marriage and why marriage is not a partnership.
Hi there, Rocky, and hello to all our listeners. Today, we are, in fact, talking about marriage, why it's not a partnership, and what that actually means. I'm very interested to see how this goes, because when most people think about marriage, that's exactly what they think of. They think of it as a partnership or life partner, right?
That's right.
So let's get right into it, Rocky. Why is marriage not a partnership?
Yeah, great question. And I really love answering this question. Now, let's think about what a partnership is. So when I think of the word partnership, I'm thinking of kind of like a business scenario. So Kim, if you and I were to start a business together and we were 50-50, right? If we were 50% partners in our business, that would mean that we each have a stake in the company. And out of that stake, we have controlling abilities for that, right? Now, here's the problem. Would be the con of having a partnership, is that at some point, if I feel like you're not putting your work and effort or your weight into our company, I could buy you out or fire you, right? Or find some way to get you out of the company. And likewise, if for whatever reason you feel like I'm not pulling my weight, I'm not doing my share, that you can find a way to buy me out or fire me. So to me, this is what a partnership sounds like and behaves like. And that's kind of the con to it, is that you're both in it 50-50, but you're not in it all entirely. And at some point, there's like this loophole that says, well, if you're not doing what I like, if I'm not, or how do I say this? If you're doing something that I don't like, that I don't agree with, or I feel like you're not putting the same amount of effort or energy or commitment to it, I'm just going to get rid of you. I'm going to fire you or buy you out. That's essentially what a partnership sounds like. So when you think about it like this, place this in the context of marriage. Does this really sound like something that you'd really want to commit to and give your life over to, right? That's why, for me, marriage is not a partnership.
Sounds like that would be headed for divorce.
Yeah, pretty much. Or at least it would be entertaining the idea of a divorce, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you touched on that in a previous episode that was really interesting about not even introducing that as an option. So right. If our listeners want to jump back to, I think it was 2 episodes ago, there's some really interesting information on that. So if not a 50-50 partnership, what is marriage then? How do we describe what marriage is?
Yeah. So the best way that I could describe marriage is, again, from kind of like a more biblical common phrasing that we would say. So there's this phrase in the Bible that says, the man and woman shall cleave to each other and they shall become one flesh. So the idea is that the two shall become one flesh. Now, let's break this down. What does actually being one really mean? Well, here's some ideas. So number one, being one can actually mean being joined together, being stuck together, being inseparable, almost like you're both cemented together. All right. Number two, being one could be about the idea of we are pursuing each other closely and with intentionality. Number three, being one can be kind of like this. You know how we have this common phrase of what's mine is yours and yours is mine, right? Yeah. And it's referencing material possessions. Well, I think of marriage, of being one, as basically me saying, well, your life is mine and my life is yours. So the idea of it is that I want to be absolutely interested in what your life is and what it's all about. And I absolutely want to be interested in how you see your world and how you want to show up in your world. So that's another way of us describing being one. Another way would be the idea of clinging by pursuit. So think of it from this perspective. It's like being so interested in some sort of like product that you want to buy, right? Like maybe it's a purse or a shoe or some sort of, laptop or tablet or smartwatch, and you're so interested in it that you're constantly pursuing information on it online. Like you're reading everything about it, the advancements to it, when is it going to be launched, and what things you can do with it. Well, the idea of being one is like having that same level of interest in your partner, your spouse, right? That I'm so interested in you that I'm pursuing you to that same level of intensity and excitement. Another one, or another way of actually describing what marriage is in terms of us being one, is that being one literally means you're the one, the only one. And that's, I think, really the whole idea of being one, is that I'm no longer looking for anybody else. It's like, nope, you're the one. I chose you. Like, what is there to even look at? Like, this is the one. This is, it's kind of like buying a car. It's like, nope, this is the model. That's all I need. I don't need to look for anything else. Does that make sense? So that's kind of the whole idea of what marriage really is and how we should really think of describing marriage, which is really the idea of two people becoming one, joined together and being so interested in each other that we're absolutely content you're the one.
That's a lot to think about. Is there an easy image or metaphor that you could help us understand basically everything that you just said?
Yeah.
A little bit better?
Oh,
Something a little,
absolutely. And here's the best metaphor for this. So think of it like this. So I always tell my clients that imagine that you are two individual people, right? A man and a woman who each own your own boutique business, right? So you're 10 blocks away from each other. You happen to be in the same city, on the same street. You're 10 blocks away from each other, but you each own your own individual businesses. You've never met before, but you have the same type of business, right? Same demographic, same product, same service. And in between, 5 blocks, right in the middle, right in the halfway mark between your two businesses, there's a Starbucks, right? So every day you both go to Starbucks and you get your cup of coffee, and pretty soon you bump into each other and you start up a conversation. And that conversation spills into like infatuation, and eventually it spills into, oh my God, I love you. And so you guys start connecting and you commit to each other in a dating process. And pretty soon out of that flourishes a business idea. And the business idea is like, hey, we're in love. We're really joined together now. Why don't we combine our businesses? Let's keep both the different locations available, but let's combine our efforts. So let's combine our efforts in marketing. Let's buy all our products in bulk and split, right, the cost of that. So that means that we would increase in our profits and lower our losses, right? So here's an idea of two individual people who've decided to come together and join together. So that's kind of like the dating scenario. All right. So now let's progress this. Imagine there's a large company called Marriage Incorporated. And Marriage Incorporated has been researching these two different companies, right? This man and this woman. And what they say is like, hey, we'd like to buy you guys out. We really love what the two of you guys have done and how you guys have merged your businesses together and the business decisions and the visions that you guys have in your business. And we'd like to buy you guys out. What would you guys think of that? So this man and this woman would be like, oh, this is so exciting. Yeah, we're being bought out for sure. We'd love that. Now, the minute they say that, Marriage Incorporated throws out a caveat. So Marriage Incorporated says, well, hey, this is wonderful. We'd love to buy you out. But here's the caveat. The minute we buy you out, we'd like both of you to stay on and have control over your divisions and to lead your divisions, except that you would just be a part of our company now. So what would happen is Marriage Incorporated would buy out these two businesses, and these two businesses would become subdivisions within this incorporation. So now what that means is that you no longer have your own individual rights and policies, right? And rules and guidelines that you could just do with whatever you want. That once you got bought out, you would from that point on be working and serving under the control and auspices of Marriage Incorporated, which means the only policies and rights that you would have are the rights from that company. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the perfect way of understanding what marriage is like, is that there's a company called Marriage Incorporated who wants to buy you out. And a part of that process of joining is that you both work together to serve the purposes of Marriage Incorporated. You're not serving just your own entity anymore. You're both
So,
working together to serve, basically the benefits of this company.
mhm. So if that is the case with marriage, then, and you're not 50-50 and you're merging everything, all of the efforts, all of the values, everything the same, does this mean that you lose your identity or individuality when you're married? I think that's
Yeah,
something people struggle with or worried about.
absolutely. I can totally see how people would struggle with that idea. And the truth is no. On the contrary, you actually don't really ever lose your identity. In fact, you actually become more and more and more who you were really created to be within your marriage, because it's actually your marriage that's going to burn off all the masks, the guck, and the shit that you have covered yourself with all your life, so that the real you actually is able to show up and be alive.
Hmm.
So, in fact, your experience is that you're going to actually experience the greatest level of freedom in your marriage than you actually did when you were single. So you're really going to discover what true freedom is by actually discovering what true life is in terms of who you really are within your marriage. And when you're single, you actually don't have that ability to do that. So what I always say to people is that being free, yeah, this is probably the best way to say it. Being free is when my spouse truly sees me for all that I am and not just what I want my spouse to see. So what usually happens is that we typically enter into a relationship where we're pretending to be somebody.
Hmm.
And when I'm married, I actually experience much greater freedom and a much more pure identity of who I am, because I'm finally ceasing from trying to pretend.
Mhm.
I'm not putting masks on, and I'm no longer reacting out of my insecurities or fears. So I'm able to actually become more and more purely who I am. Now, an example of this would be the common analogy is that men are always afraid that in marriage, women are wanting them to be more feminine. Okay.
Hmm.
And I can see why that um, concept is out there, right? I can see how in some cases women are trying to do that to men. But I would say in general, the idea of marriage isn't about making a man more feminine. The idea of marriage is actually it's helping a man to become more expressive of how he feels. And so what happens is when I'm single, because I'm not really doing deep inner work on myself, when I get triggered by my girlfriend, I'm going to blow up in anger, because that's the only way that I know how to deal with myself, right? To protect myself or defend myself or my stance or opinion or whatever it would be. Now, once I got married and this gets triggered in my marriage, I realized that as I start doing the deep inner work, I actually no longer have to blow up with my wife anymore, because suddenly here's somebody who's not going to run and leave me because I'm simply showing up with a full of guck and a whole bunch of shit and junk in my heart. That she's
Mhm.
actually committed with me and she's not running away. And because of that, I no longer have to react that way. So as a consequence, I'm actually becoming more of a man, because now I actually know how to handle my emotions in a healthy way. So that's kind of my long-winded answer to your question. Like, do we lose our identity? No, we don't actually. We actually increase in discovering our identity in our individuality.
If you're with the right person, because being in the right marriage lets you be that way, right? Like when they accept all of you and you just, because there is a lot of fakeness for people. And I think that's a huge part of why certain marriages don't last long, because they put up this front and they don't let those inner layers come out. And they just can't keep up the persona that they put out to try and get that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point that you make, Kim. Here's my take on that. Many times it's not so much about the kind of person that you're with. When the commitment is there, what makes it magical is that you're actually learning how to deal with your own stuff first instead of trying to change another person. So
Yeah.
that's really the main key.
Yeah. So a lot of people are in long-term relationships and living together and think that, you know, their common law or however their setup is. Now, what really makes a marriage unique? Like, why should one want to get married if they already have or think that they have all of those things?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as and you know, I'm going to touch on this when we actually talk about the next episode for singles. But as a just a short answer to this process, what makes marriage unique is really about the commitment towards each other. And that commitment is actually all bound up in a promise and a vow. All right. And I'm gonna talk about this a little bit later on here in our episodes, in this episode in particular. But just to answer your question, what really makes marriage unique? Well, here's 7 things that I would say makes marriage really unique that you can't get in any form of other types of relationships. Number 1, in marriage, you're really going to experience what unconditional love truly means, because you're actually going to be married to somebody who's decided to not ever leave you. They're not going to run no matter how messy it gets. So many people say, well, I have unconditional love towards my kids. Nope. Nope, I've got 2 boys, and I can tell you that's not unconditional. That's a responsibility. I have to love them. So in marriage, we're actually truly going to experience what unconditionally loving someone means and what being loved unconditionally means. Number 2, I'm going to truly discover what real freedom means, right? Like I just said before, I won't have to put on my masks or pretend to be somebody that I'm not anymore. Right? Number 3, I'm going to experience truly being seen and being heard. Now, this is a common thing that I hear from couples when they come in and they're so full of conflict. Most of the times, they're both saying in their own way, my partner doesn't see me. My partner doesn't hear me. And so in marriage is really the first time that we're going to experience somebody truly seeing us and hearing us as we work together through our stuff. All right. Number 4, we're going to discover where our blind spots are. Now, this is the thing that I discovered when I was single and then I got married. I mean, when I was single, I thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm like, oh my God, Rocky, you are the kindest, most generous person in the whole wide world. Nobody can beat you, not even Gandhi. And then I got married and I realized, shit, I'm really selfish. And why is that? Because my wife was able to point out to me, what are you doing? I was so selfish and I never saw it before.
Reality
So
check.
exactly. So in marriage, this is the only place that I'm truly going to see my blind spot. All right. Number 5, in marriage, I'm actually going to start healing my inner fears and my insecurities, because when I'm single, I don't have to. Because if I don't like you, I'm just going to break up and go find somebody else. Right? Number 6, I'm going to learn how to give versus feeling that I'm entitled to something. And that leads me to number 7. You are going to learn in marriage how to receive instead of trying to control what you think you should have.
I like that the second last one you just said, entitlement. I feel like that should be an episode all on its own in the future. So
Yeah,
make a
it's a
note of
huge
that
one.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I feel like that's definitely yeah, that's worth a conversation for sure. So what do you say when people have the argument? Now, this is one that everybody can relate to and has heard, obviously. Whether it's you who thinks it, or your friends, or somebody in your family, but for people who say, I don't want to get married because I don't need a piece of paper. Like what that's a thing for a lot of people, right?
Yes, the
Where is
piece
that
of
coming
paper
from?
argument.
Think about that. Yeah.
Yes, the piece of paper argument. I get this. All right, so let's talk about this. So marriage isn't about a piece of paper. So when we actually talk about a piece of paper and people are referencing a piece of paper, number one, when I hear people bring this up as an argument, what I'm really hearing is I really don't want to commit. I don't
Yeah.
want to risk hurting myself, right? That's really what they're trying to say. But to answer the paper part, the reality is that the paper is just the government's way of making sure that we are really joined so that when it comes for tax purposes, there's a way to actually give you a benefit, right?
Mhm.
Of living together, being together. And now here's the tax purposes of being able to share this lifestyle together, right? So it's really just for the government. But marriage in and of itself isn't about the paper. That's just kind of what we know about it. In reality, marriage is all about the commitment, but that commitment comes with a binding declaration and it's witnessed by others. Because otherwise, without that commitment, that this commitment is just mere words, right? So
Mhm.
we actually need some sort of binding declaration. It's got to be witnessed by people. And that's really what the marriage or the wedding day is all about. So that's kind of how I would answer it, is that marriage isn't really about the piece of paper. It is, however, about how badly do you want to be fully committed with this person, where you commit with a declaration in front of people who will be your witnesses, right? To hold you accountable to your commitment.
And get tax benefits.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like some people definitely they use the piece of paper as the wrong type of symbol. So what you're saying is it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. So
Yeah.
we are coming up against a commercial break. We will be back after this short message.
More with Rockie Lee, strategic intervention coach and host of the Clarity Coach podcast after this.
Having clarity in our lives is of the utmost importance. Clarity is the pathway to change, the juice that gets us up in the morning, the purpose that inspires us to strive for something greater. Clarity is also the ability to see things in a different way than how we believe them to be, giving us options to the possibilities that surround us. Clarity gives us the courage to bring change to the issues that hinder us from believing for a better tomorrow. Rockie Lee is a strategic intervention coach and will help you find clarity in life, in relationships, and in personal development. For more information on Clarity Coach workshops or to book a coaching session with Rockie Lee, call us at 778-883-7203. That's 778-883-7203. Or visit us online at www.claritycoach.ca/bookings. That's www.claritycoach.ca/bookings.
Now, back to Rockie Lee, strategic intervention coach and host of the Clarity Coach podcast.
Hi there, everyone. We are back with Rockie Lee. We are talking about why is marriage not a partnership. We're digging deep into some topics in this episode. It's been great so far. If you're just tuning in, just go back to the beginning because you're missing some good meat out of this one for sure. So, Rockie, why do you think there's such a low interest in getting married for the next generation? Like, what's happening there? We're talking all about marriage and about people not wanting to commit and things like that, and the piece of paper argument. And it does seem to be a trend with the next generation that people are less likely to get married. I'm pushing 40, and all of my friends, like a lot of my friends, got married in their 20s, and that's just not even heard of anymore. Like, you talk to somebody in their 20s now, and it's not even on their radar. So
Mhm.
what's happening there?
So there's kind of two things that are going on, and I'll kind of give you the cultural perspective of what's going on, and also the emotional and internal stuff that's going on. So let's talk about the internal stuff first. So the obvious reasons why the next generation are not really interested in getting married, simply because of two things: fear and bitterness. All
Mm.
right. So in terms of fear, it's pretty obvious, right? We have a lot more fear than we used to. And so here's some of the fears, like fear of getting hurt, fear of not being enough, fear of not being good enough, the fear of being rejected or even abandoned. And in some ways, there's the fear of actually opening up and letting someone in. So
Yeah.
that's what encompasses just the basics of fear. Now, we've seen a more like a rise in fear ever since we've had the rise of social media and social media apps. In fact, there's a really great book that's written out there right now. I can't remember the title of it. I might leave it in the show notes, or if you guys want to look into that book. But that book actually documented how the rise of anxiety really increased when the social media apps came in. So what we're seeing is that there's such a huge rise of fear brought about by all of these social media apps. So it's done nothing but just increase more and more fear for us. The other side of it is because of all the woundings that we've all been going through, and a lot of it starts with just our parents going through divorces, we've carried a whole series of bitternesses and resentments deep inside of us. And so all of this has shaped the way that we see relationships, right? It's caused us to create a certain belief about relationships, like, oh, it's too dangerous, I could get hurt. So all of these fears are actually, many of them are born out of things that we are still dealing with, which is our resentment and bitternesses developed either from our relationship with our parents or our previous experiences in relationships. So that's the internal reason why the next generation is really having such a low interest in wanting to get married. Now, here's the cultural reason. So when you dial back to, like, say, the 1960s and 70s, like, for example, my parents, they came from an older generation where the hierarchy of life was about getting married first,
Mhm.
having a family, and then having a career, right? That's kind of really the hierarchy of where they would spend their time and focus and energy, right? Is I want to get married, and along with that, I want to have kids, and I'm going to get a great job to be able to support that. Now, since that generation, our cultural generation has inverted that priority. So what we've done is we've actually increased the priority to have a career first, have a family second, and then marriage has actually been on the bottom. So
Mhm.
we've actually not desired it. We've actually inverted it by simply desiring a career first. So that's a cultural reason why we're just so used to wanting to get a career. Now that's actually been to our detriment, right?
Mhm.
So this is not helping. So that every time we bring such a sharp focus on creating a career first and a family second instead of marriage, what we've done is we've actually increased the ability for us to not be as open as a society anymore. So you're seeing a major decrease in people truly connecting with one another and truly understanding the difference between love versus intimacy.
I agree with you on that, because I definitely see, like, before it was more of building a life with somebody, and now it's build your life and then find somebody to add to it later.
That's right.
Yeah. So what would you say are the benefits of getting married?
Oh, there's so many benefits. Um, Yeah, there's so many benefits, but let me give you, like, I would say 9 of my uh favorite benefits that you would get out of getting married. And we've mentioned a few of these earlier in this episode, but maybe here's another way that I'm going to frame some of them so it'll sound a little fresh. So number one, here's one of the benefits, that you get to learn how to be with someone, right? And more importantly, we learn how to be with somebody, especially when I don't want to be with them, and especially when I don't feel like it. And we've lost that art form. We've lost that skill to want to be with somebody even when I don't want to, and even when I don't feel like it, right? It's all more propositioned on, I'm only going to be with you if I feel like it and I want it, right? So that's number one. That's the benefit there. You learn how to be with somebody. Number two benefit is I learn to solve problems through a commitment by not running away. All right. Number three benefit, I learned to see that the problem is about me, and I pursue the journey of changing myself instead of changing my world or changing my partner. Benefit number four, I get to experience unconditional love, right? So I've mentioned that on a previous episode about love, that it is not a feeling, but I've also mentioned it just above before our break. So we get to truly experience unconditional love. Benefit number five, here's the kicker. I am forced to change. Okay. So I know people don't want to hear this, but here's the truth. If it weren't for marriage, I would have never been forced to change the things about me that irk other people that they're afraid to tell me about. Right. So I am forced to change. Guess what? The minute I change, I realize how much better I've become. Right. Benefit number six. Here's a little off the beaten path benefit. Statistically, what we found is when we have kids, kids actually do better having both parents versus just having one. So that doesn't mean that you can't be a great single parent. That's not by any means. Like, there's so many loving single parents out there, but we are finding statistically that kids who actually have both parents, they're actually able to handle stress and pressure in a much different way than kids who are actually raised as single parents. So that is one of the benefits of actually being married. Benefit number seven, you start to heal from all your past hurts and fears with your partner. Benefit number eight, we grow up emotionally healed. So when we are single, ironically, I'm sure, Kimberly, you've met people like this in the business that you work in, where you meet somebody and you realize like they're the same age as you, but somewhere in this conversation, they emotionally showed up like a little kid, right?
Oh, totally.
Okay. So this is what we call our inner child, right? Where we're at a certain age biologically, but emotionally, our age was capped, right? Because of a previous experience. Well, in marriage, we actually get to heal that part of us so that the emotion actually catches up to our biological age. And it's beautiful when this happens. And you see it quite often in people who really work on their marriage. You really see the healing and the shift that comes up. Now, last but not least, benefit number 9, we really get to learn how to open up and let someone in instead of closing up. And this is really hard because in our society, we have learned very well how to be professional closing uppers, if I can put it that way. It's bad grammar, I get it, but this is really the whole idea is that we're really great at being people who know how to just close up and shut down. And there is no way for us to actually grow if we keep doing that. So the only way that we can truly evolve and grow in a healthy way is when I decide to open up and to let someone in, even when it's scary, even when I don't feel like it, right? So anyways, those would be the 9 benefits of getting married.
So what do many couples get wrong about marriage?
Yeah, so here's the common mistake that I see with couples who are married, and it's really about a mindset. Okay. And the basis of it is that we have been so um, brainwashed by education to see life as stages that we step through, right? And then once we step through those stages, kind of like, all right, here I graduated high school. I'm going to go to university now and do 4 more years. And then when I graduate, finally, I'm done learning, right? That's kind of how we see life and experience life. Well, what
Bad
we
approach.
yeah, right. So now here's the problem of where this shows up in our marriage is that as a couple who's married, what we've done is we've actually taken that same concept and we've applied it to the wedding day.
Mhm. Oh,
So
I totally see
couples,
that. I love
right?
where you're going with this because this
Exactly.
is
So you get it, right?
marriage
So
failure 101. Here we go. Red
exactly.
alert.
So we typically treat our wedding day as the marriage. And that's where we get it wrong. It's kind of like, oh, we've arrived. Here's a big wedding party, and I am done. I've arrived.
Yeah.
Right now,
No,
I
they
can just
get to
sit on
that
my
point.
lazy boy
They have
and
to get to that point before they give up. That's the thing.
exactly right. It's like I don't have to do any more work anymore. I've arrived, right? And
Yeah.
that's the misnomer. That's what's getting married couples in the problem is that the wedding day was just an event, but marriage is a lifestyle, right? So you have to work and create this marriage lifestyle. Marriage isn't a plug and play. And the wedding day was just an event. That's actually not your marriage. So that's really the main issue here of what's getting couples into the wrong place in their
So
marriage.
in that case, do we even need a wedding then? Like, can we have a marriage without the wedding? Is the
Oh,
wedding issue?
yeah, such a great question. Such a great question, Kimberly. So here's my answer to this. Uh, the short of it is yes. Hell yes. We need a wedding day. And here's the primary reason why. What makes the wedding day so unique from a party is that the wedding day is centered around vows, our marriage vows to each other. And without those marriage vows, a wedding day is just one freaking expensive party.
Yeah.
Now here's what the marriage vows are. The marriage vows are the promises that I am making to my wife, to my spouse, of what I am committing to with no limitations to it, right? So this is why it's so important for us to declare these marriage vows because at the end of all the things that I say that I'm promising to you, at the end of all of that, I basically undergird all of that with this other promise, which is through good time and bad, in sickness and in health, till death do us part, right? That's the powerful commitment that makes a wedding day so special. Now, when I make this vow, this promise, now in front of all of the people who love us, our family and friends, now it's like there's witnesses out there that can stand testimony and hold me accountable to what I am promising my partner, my wife, my spouse, or my husband, and vice versa. And that is what makes a wedding day so special that we need to have that.
Interesting. Yeah. It's true. It is a special day.
Mhm.
Expensive, like you said.
Yeah, and here's the catch. Look, it doesn't have to be. Yeah, it
though, right?
doesn't
It's a
have to be.
declaration and a celebration of your
Exactly.
commitment, right? So.
Exactly.
So can you express in a simplified way what the main goal of marriage is for those of us who are not married?
Yeah. So for those of you that are not married, and I'm going to throw this in. So here's a simple way to define what the main goal of marriage is for those of you that are not married, as well as for those of you who are married. It's the same thing. And here's the goal: to love my spouse, my partner, more than I did yesterday. To care for my spouse more than I did yesterday. That's the goal. That's how simple it is. So that if every day when I wake up, my main question should be, did I love my spouse today more than I did yesterday? Did I care for my spouse today more than I did yesterday. That's really the goal.
So for people who are married or wanting to get married or in a marriage that are struggling, what would be your words of encouragement to those people?
Okay, so let me speak to those of you guys out there, that my listeners out there. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, because this is an episode that's really dear to my heart. So if you're listening right now and you're not married, you guys are a couple, and you're wondering like what do we do next? Here's my number one advice: get premarital counseling before you get married. Invest yourself in getting a good counselor, therapist, or relationship coach who really can give you skills on communication, on forgiving, in communicating needs, and understanding how to execute and give love. Find somebody who can really prepare you for marriage. It's such a worthwhile investment. So go get premarital counseling before you get married. Number two,
you can help with that.
Sorry?
You can help them with, I said you
Absolutely.
can help them with that.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks for bringing that up, Kimberly. So for those of you guys, if you don't know where to look for, just reach out and contact me. I do premarital counseling, and it's a wonderful process, and it actually comes with me officiating your marriage, right? So it's a 2-for-1 kind of a deal, right? Now, let me speak to those of you guys that are married right now and you're struggling in your marriage. Here's my one super huge advice for you guys right now: go get professional help. Like, absolutely go get professional help. What I think is so crazy is that when we have made such an amazing declaration and promise and commitment to love somebody so deeply, but yet when we're struggling, we kind of do this like do-it-yourself construction idea.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so crazy, because think of all the things that happen in our life where we go out and we get a professional to help us fix it. So if I'm having, leaks in my house, like, I'm going to go out and get a plumber
to fix your
right?
toilet, but don't get help to fix your marriage. It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly, right? And if I got a broken bone, I'm not going to a lawyer. I'm not going to go to, like a Boy Scout leader. I'm going to go to a doctor, right? I'm going to get a trained professional to help me out to get healed. Well, this is the same thing. If your marriage, if you guys are suffering, if you guys are in pain and you guys are struggling, go get professional help. Like, get that help, because you've already gotten yourself in this position without help. So why would you keep staying in this pattern without help? Go get help, and I promise you it'll be well worth it. You guys will truly be able to get healed, and you'll start seeing where the blind spots are, and you'll be able to learn how to create the marriage that you both really, really, really want.
Very good advice. I see we are actually coming up against the clock here, Rocky. Thanks so much for today's conversation. And a reminder to our listeners that Rocky is available for a free consultation. Just visit him at claritycoach.ca to set up an appointment. Where else can we find you online there, Rocky?
Well, you can always find me at claritycoach.ca/love talks. You'll find all the information there, and I really would love to touch base with you. So feel free to reach out to me on email and by phone. All my information is on the website, claritycoach.ca/love talks.
Perfect. Thanks again to our listeners, and we will catch you on the next episode of Love Talks, where Rocky talks about why singles are finding it hard to fall in love and get married. Juicy topic, and I'll be interested in that one. Can't wait to have a chat about that. I am single, so it's always nice to hear your opinion on the single people, that's for sure. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode, and get in touch with Rocky anytime for a free consultation at claritycoach.ca.
Thanks for listening to the Clarity Coach Podcast with Rockie Lee, Strategic Intervention Coach. If you have any questions regarding Clarity Coach or the Clarity Coach workshops, please call us at 778-883-7203. That's 778-883-7203. and visit us online at www.claritycoach.ca. That's www.claritycoach.ca.